go to Cuba for a while and studied. You were talking about being interested in Santeria religion
Oh yeah.
and like the Bata music and stuff. So tell us a little bit about your trip, unless you did while I was.
Oh, sure, sure. No. Yeah, I mean, that was a big attraction. I've always been kind of interested in spirituality, and it's probably because I grew up in a really religious home, but had studied. I'd been into Vedanta, Hinduism prior to that, and interested in spirituality from around the world in addition to music. And that's a huge part of Afro-Cuban music. It's infused inside everything. The Congolese traditions, Apollo, Santeria, Abaquá, men's secret society music, Arara, all these cultural things have spiritual elements. So yeah, I mean, I had a month, a Black History Month, must have been in '96, where Bird hired me for young audience uh, djembe shows, Mali Empire shows, and I made like $2,500 in a month or something like that, or in
Uh-huh.
6 weeks. And I was like, okay, I got to do something with this money. What should I do? And I found out about a study program called, at that time it was called Caribbean Music and Dance Programs, run out of Oakland. It's now called Plaza Cuba. They still run them, and they organize cultural trips for people to go study in Cuba.
Uh-huh.
So I signed up and went down there for a month, spent a couple of weeks in Santiago de Cuba, a couple of weeks in Havana, and they set up all the classes through the art schools for you and take you to events and things like that. So that was a chance to just go, spend a month down there and absorb, study in classes, and go to events, public events, and a couple of private ones. It seems like the first night we got into Santiago de Cuba, the organization had set up and paid for a voodoo ceremony, Vodun, which existed in Santiago because of its proximity to Haiti.
Uh-huh.
So they had a event in a home, and that was one of the first things. Oh my god! I mean, sewn in the living room, played acoustically, was one of the most amazing things. Acoustic music mixed perfectly because people are just playing. It's not blasting through some huge PA. And then in the next room, they're doing a ceremony, and they like sacrifice a goat and like lop its head off. It was a
Oh,
thing
oh,
for
oh.
Ogun, and they're rubbing blood on
Oh,
everybody. And it's like, wow, mind boggling. So that was my first experience
wow.
in Cuba. And Santiago was intense. I mean, there's a magnetic energy down there that was heavy and indescribable. It was totally, when we went back to Havana, it felt like it was so much lighter and modern. It was deep in Santiago. It's an older, it was the original capital. So it's an old city. I don't think I'd been to places that old ever, because it was my first time out of the States. And everybody seemed psychic. It was a trip. It was freaking me out. But we got to take classes we had a couple of young teachers, learn the styles. I got to march with a conga in the street that was prepping for Carnival, which they do in the summer there.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Yeah. The music's heavy. So just to be in with the people and experience the culture directly was amazing for that amount of time. And then I got to do the same thing again, but Bali in 2016, or I mean 2006, 10 years later was the
Uh-huh.
next big trip. But getting to be there and stewing in the music. And both times were interesting because '96, when I went, was right after the Brothers to the Rescue guys got shot down. You remember? I don't know that you guys remember that. They used to
What?
fly over Havana and drop guys from Miami. They
Yeah.
they'd fly over Havana and drop leaflets. And finally, Fidel like shot him down and killed him. So everybody got canceled like the weekend before we were supposed to travel. and we had to reapply and for our papers to go legally through the State Department. And mine got through. Most people didn't. So it was a small class, and the vibe was kind of weird down there. It was a little tense. It's more so in Havana. And same thing. And when I went to Bali, they had like the bombings outside Kuta, like, you know, the year before I went. So there wasn't much tourism. There weren't too many white people around, which was good. No Australian bonehead tourists, you know.
When you sat in with the circles, were you accepted at, did they see you and were you able to converse musically with them?
It's kind of an etheric connection because it's a language in and of itself. And I got to play with people in Bali too, some. So that was interesting. And they were kind of a little freaked out because my teacher had me sit in and play drum, which is kind of a lead role on certain pieces. And they're kind of like, what? What's this guy doing? You know? And I also got to present an original composition to their neighborhood group and teach them a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it's all, there was much more of a language barrier in Bali because I mean, you could do Bahasa. It was a last minute thing to go. So I didn't really have time to prep and try to learn much of anything except, you know, Om Swastiastu, Apakabarbai, stuff like, you know, just basic greetings and stuff.
So in the mid 2000s, who are you playing with and what is the majority of your time being spent? How is it being spent musically?
God.
Well, pre-corona too.
What the heck was going on then? Well, of course, you guys probably know BCR Band, Dwight's thing, Black Crack Review. I had subbed with that for Bird since the 90s. And finally, he retired in 97. I joined the band. So I've been playing with BCR, which is kind of an avant-world beat band. Who else was I playing with back then? Lord. Oh, Miguel De Leon and his orchestra, Salsa. I played in salsa bands, Orquesta Flamante, through the 90s. Then Miguel, when he had gone to Puerto Rico to play with Roberto Rowena's band, and then come back home and started up Mambo X again, which then got rebranded as the Mambo De Leon Orchestra. So I played with him, and he had a Latin jazz group called Carte Blanche. Played with them all through the 2000s.
Were you writing at that time? Were you composing a lot during that time?
Yeah, you know, at that point I started writing hybrid gamelan Western European works. So I wrote, and as interestingly enough, my first foray was a piece called America Cubali. So it blended Cuban stuff with Balinese, with sort of Copland-esque harmony. And it was written for the gamelan orchestra, plus I think it was bass clarinet, English horn, and
all the usual stuff.
Well, just like a trio of Western instruments and gamelan, yeah.
Tell us about your process. I mean, how do you sit down and write a piece that combines Cuban music and gamelan and a traditional Western reeds?
Well, you just bring the elements in. You know, it's like, okay, let's put the bata parts on the gamelan, but do it in. They have a protocol called kotekon, or an approach kotekon in the smaller instruments. I think we hadn't really described gamelan, but it's basically a big group of metallophones that are pitched keyed instruments, bronze instruments. And the large instruments kind of play slow moving bass or tenor parts. As they get smaller, they get more active. And when you get into the smaller instruments, they play these intense interlocking rhythmic melodic patterns. So I was like, hey, we could take the bata parts from the drums and have them put on the keyed instruments, and they'll play kotekon. So you're playing the rhythm of the bata, but it has pitch attached to it. And then the Western instruments are playing melody against it. You know, it varies piece to piece, honestly, the approach. That was that particular one. Yeah, so each one's a little different. That's all I can say.
What's your go-to instrument for composition? When you're
This is so lame, but it's still the piano. Because I can,
love,
you know, you can like play out different parts simultaneously. Or, you know, I think I'm getting, now that I've got the little Porta Studio and things, if I've got, I can put, you know, you can use it as a template scratch pad and record different parts and see how they line up, versus trying to ham bone them out at the keyboard. You can actually physically record them. So that's where I'm at now, is like trying to use the studio as a template and then a production tool too, to produce the final work. So, you know, I have this weird interest in synthesizers and electronica too, though I'm not into computer beats. That's one thing I never really connected to, is using like machine music production. But I like those sounds too.
and they're getting so much better. The sounds available in
Oh
sound
yeah.
libraries and stuff, it's just, they're so
But
much better.
what I've got are all these old analog things. Like a lot of my gear, some of my gear is like from the 80s, 80s, and then I've gotten some reissues, like the Behringer model, which is like their cheap mini Moog, and I just got a Yamaha Reface CS, which is kind of a analog modeling CS type, like the CS80 series type of vibe. So I like those analog sounds too.
Yeah.
I'm still just trying to find my own voice and what it can become. You know, it's a process of becoming, I think. So.
Well, where are you? So bring us up to date now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd been working on this piece, the studio produced piece, for several months, and finally wrapped it up. So, and that was a slow process because I was really learning the ins and outs of my gear. So that was a slow process. Outside of it was really material that I had already written and arranged for People's Liberation Big Band, which is another group that I've been involved with since about 2006. Brad's thing, which is great and cool opportunity. But yeah, so I was learning the gear. I had gotten it years ago, but really just kind of used it on a surface level as a scratch pad. But now it's like, okay, if I really want to produce something on this, and it's a Porta Studio, which is great because I can move it around in the space and record. But then I had sections of a longer piece that I needed to knit together, and I did that in GarageBand on the computer, and that worked out okay. So that was that process. And again, I had kind of the folkloric vibe. There's the Afro-Cuban percussion, African percussion, the synthesizers. I played bassoon a fair amount on that. I've got this weird old marimba over here that I picked up from somebody years ago for like $80, and use that. So I'm just like, let's use all my junk, or a lot of it, you know.
Yeah, then your wife won't throw it out if you're using it, then you know.
Yeah, exactly. Right. No, she leaves me alone. This is my room.
What's exciting to you now? Is there something you'd like to learn now?
Well, you know, since I've been playing with Matt Hopper for a few years, and he does kind of Brazilian edge stuff, though I was doing mostly congas, and I'd always been a little resistant to the Brazilian thing. It's not really my deal, but I've been on a practice regimen of learning pandeiro, which it's the Brazilian tambourine, which has a very particular stylistic thing. So I've got a practice regimen working on that, but of pandeiro, right? So you guys have probably heard it. basically. And then there's this little frame drum called tamborim, which is a whole different deal. It's used in the bachacatas. And there's a particular thing they do where they flip it and play these patterns. So that's part of my regimen, the pandero, tamborim, and just regular tambourine, which since playing in Chris Hazelton's Boogaloo 7 and seeing Nick Howell, who just slays on the tambourine. I'd always thought a tambourine, it's like Josie and the Pussycats or something. It's kind of like, that's not a serious instrument, but it is.
It's like what Linda McCartney played her, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. But man, it's a thing. So I've been starting to work on that. It's like, I figure as a percussionist, these are good things to have in the arsenal. So that's kind of the new stuff that I've been working on in terms of instruments, new styles. Not so, now what I really want to do is sit back and try to do my thing. And what's that going to look like? What are the possibilities? So there needs to be some visioning, I guess, or, the people always talk about how you need to write stuff down, and I've been resistant to that. And I need to start doing it. Maybe some journaling, maybe writing some lyrics. Who knows? Anything's possible. Maybe a protest song.
We need it.
I know. We're in wild times, aren't we? I mean, the world really fundamentally shifted when this thing hit, and it's going through a big change.
Yeah.
The business angle is one that I've been very resistant to, and I need to, it's like, okay, maybe it's okay to make money. Maybe I need to start researching licensing and just ways to make money off your music. At least try, because I've just been absolutely resistant to that. It's like, if you're making money, you're a sellout.
So you've really benefited from a number of kind of extraordinary presence of people in your life that have really, from very diverse, that really pushed you along and pulled you along and inspired you and encouraged you. Do you see a role for yourself as a mentor, and has there been any opportunities yet for that? And are you interested in that?
It's not something that I have ever really engaged in. Probably the closest thing, I think, Enrique from Making Movies had me go to his summer thing and work with the kids one time. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I feel like maybe I don't know enough to play that role in a holistic manner, especially these days when, you got guys like Dominique Sanders, who's really got it together in terms of the business and the creative side. Those are the guys that need to be the mentors,
I don't know. I think we need
my thing.
I think we need all kinds of mentors, and the fact that you're still doing your thing and still so passionate and excited about your art, I think that's so encouraging and positive. I'm wondering, as Heartland Song Network goes forward, maybe there's some mentorship opportunities. And
I'm open to it. I guess, it's that old self-deprecating thing of like, I'm not worthy. But yeah, I'd be open to whatever. I know. Get over it.
If you could collaborate with anyone in the world, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh my God. I have no idea. I mean, that's like just crazy. There's so many potentials. No individual is popping into my head right now, honestly. Oh, Brian Eno.
Oh, good one. Wow. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about open territory.
That's a good one. Now I'm hearing Music for Airports in my head right now.
I know. I like his treatment of the Pachelbel canon on discrete
Oh my
music.
God.
Fave. I love that.
Oh, yeah, so good. So good. What would you like future generations to say about the work that Pat Conway created here in Kansas City?
hey, that was pretty cool and imaginative. Who would have thought of that? What is it? It
That's
doesn't fit.
awesome.
I mean, yeah, because now, like, especially, I don't know how long this has gone on, but everything's like in a lane. It's compartmentalized style. It's this, it's that. I want people to be like, well, that doesn't really fit any of my preconceptions of style, or what is it? That would be success.
God, I think that's our button right there. I think that's pretty amazing.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's been a lot of fun.